Hello. So I'm going to talk about heroic dexterity today. It's an important stat for quite a few people, and yeah. So heroic dexterity. Why would you want it? You'd want it for damage if you are a melee class. That includes rangers. You would want it for defenses if you are a tank class, and yeah. So what it does, so I'm going to do several videos, including the other heroic stats, but it does a few things. It increases your accuracy, and it increases your combat effects. Accuracy determines how likely you are to hit a mob. Now that doesn't mean that you'll stop them from riposting or blocking. That would be strike through. It just means that you would hit instead of a miss. It affects your combat effects, and um, as you get more heroic dexterity, it gets slower going up to full combat effects. And it affects, because it is in effect increasing your dexterity cap. It also increases your chance to critically hit, and because it increases your chance to critically hit, it increases your chance to assassinate or headshot or whatever the berserker one is. So it does a lot of good things for damage. Um, lets you do damage, lets you do more damage. So that's the easy part of it. The hard part to explain is the defensive part. So I'm just gonna pull up Fran's here. Just make sure. Okay, so I have this. Okay, so you're not going to get to see Fran's because of how I'm streaming this. But what Fanra has on her website is that riposte, block, and pare are increased by heroic dexterity, and that every 25 heroic dexterity gives you 0.1%. So 25,000, no, 2,500 would be 100% chance to riposte, which sounds a lot, but that's really not a whole lot of heroic dexterity. So I think there's some diminishing returns going on. But it's to riposte, block, and pare, as well as your other things that I've talked about. So why would you want to riposte, block, or pare? Obviously to take less damage, but as I've mentioned, there's things that you can do to get past a riposte, block, or pare, such as strike through. And ever more often recently, mobs have more and more strike through. Not just players, but mobs do. So when you're stacking heroic dexterity, you've got to keep in mind that a mob may have a chance of striking through. And it is such a problem on the big raid monsters like the Vulaks and the Tantors and the Zlandikars that you're not going to riposte, block, or pare anything those mobs do. Now the Tanterlings and the Guardians, the lesser monsters on raids, those are things you can riposte, block, and pare. So if you're tanking mostly trash on a raid, if you're kiting, this is your bread and butter. The next most functional heroic stat would be heroic agility, which increases your AC and your dodge, or heroic stamina, which is kind of complicated and I'll get into it at another time. But those are your other two defensive stats. The other reason you would want heroic dexterity would be specifically if you're a Shadow Knight. They have a bunch of effects that can give you life when you deal damage. And as we've covered, heroic dexterity increases the damage you do. So then not only would you be doing more damage on a raid, which would help the raid, but you would also be staying alive more, which would help you as a tank. So heroic dexterity would be like really good if you're a Shadow Knight, for pretty much anything on a raid. It may not, be perfect if you had to tank a main raid boss unless you used your stay alive, deal damage, gain life button. Then it would be, probably just as good as a warrior defensive button. Anyways, that is heroic dexterity. I think I covered everything. Oh yes. One thing with heroic dexterity, pretty much every melee wants it. It increases your headshot, your assassinate, your berserker damage spike thing. But some classes don't want it. Some classes do so little damage on critical hits that they think, well, maybe I want heroic strength or something else instead. So some classes, and you're gonna have to research this on your own, really want minimal heroic dexterity and would much rather have something else. Now, that doesn't mean they're gonna skip heroic dexterity entirely. It just means that after a certain point, they're probably gonna start stacking another stat, just because the diminishing returns on high heroic dexterity aren't worth the returns they would get from getting a large number of the other stat, which I think is heroic strength. And of course, all of this, like a caster isn't going to want heroic dexterity. They can't riposte. I don't think they can't. They can't use it for defensive purposes, and they're not going to be doing a whole lot of critical hits on their melee weapon. They don't have dual wield. They don't have double attack. So a caster doesn't want heroic dexterity. And that's intelligence or wisdom casters. Some intelligence or wisdom casters might want heroic agility to take some hits, but that's for another day. Anyways, I hope that has helped you. And there is a lot of bad information out there, and I really hope that I haven't added anything to that. I think I've done some good research on this, and I think that this is mostly correct. Thank you.